Recording now. So, Heather, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and Breakthrough?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about myself. We'll start there. I've been with Breakthrough for I think it's going on 8 years now. And Breakthrough is about 16 years old a good portion of the life of Breakthrough, which has been a really fun thing to both see the evolution of the team and the business and be a part of what we're growing there. My roles primarily at Breakthrough have sort of always been focused on customer experience and driving value to our clients. So started out in a marketing role. That was primarily my background before I got into Breakthrough. Then started taking on sort of broader teams focused on marketing, culture, our applied knowledge team, which is research and publications. Then moved into more of a sort of business development role with sales and marketing. And currently, and for the last couple of years, I've been the COO of our supply chain division at Breakthrough. And that has really been focused on how do we continue to broaden our impact and our footprint with our current clients and moving from, what was a very niche focus in transportation fuel management, sort of more broadly into the transportation space in total. So that has been certainly a fun and exciting new project for me and the team.
I bet. So a big consensus that I get whenever I talk to supply chain professionals is that marketing heavily relates to the industry, and that is not something that most people think about. So how has that background affected your role today?
Yeah, that's, I think, a really interesting connection. And I think that you're right. Before I even joined the Breakthrough team, I was more in a marketing and merchandising role with a large retailer. So certainly got to see sort of what that front end marketing and sort of merchandise planning, in-store design even looked like. And certainly, the connection that I make is I think that marketing is really about the promises that we're making to our customers, and supply chain is about setting up the infrastructure, the strategy, the execution to deliver on those promises. So really the chain sort of connects all the way from brand and marketing through supply chain. And I think that, if the supply chain isn't sort of working on those promises that we make our customers, those sort of corporate initiatives that we have, then we're not going to ultimately achieve our goals. So I think that your connection is a smart one. In my mind, those are very connected functions.
I completely agree with you. So, what attributes do you think a successful supply chain leader has?
Yeah, really good question. I guess I'll start a little bit with Breakthrough and then broaden it a bit. So on the Breakthrough team, we describe our successful team members as smart, passionate, and edgy. And I think smart sort of speaks for itself. Certainly in supply chain and transportation, there's just a lot going on. And being able to be analytical, have a sort of command of data, make connections, those are all really important attributes to make you successful. Passionate, I think, is huge. Certainly we do better work when we're invested and excited in it. And it really, I think, pushes us to think differently about what are our best options, problem solve more creatively. So I think that that's really important. And edgy, I think, is a really interesting word to describe, successful team members. But it means something specific. And, it's not that we have a whole workforce of sort of rebels running around, but instead is that we have team members that are have conviction to the change and the value that we're delivering for our clients. And even when, there may be opposing market forces, for example, we'll fight for that strategy that we've put in place and create good results. So I think that that's like a really fun and comprehensive way to talk about successful team members at Breakthrough. But one of the things, I was thinking a little bit more broadly about it, and in a presentation that we recently did, talked about striking the right balance between data and relationships. And I certainly think in the supply chain, it is those two things, in the command of those two things, that makes people successful. Certainly we have to look to data and technology to find the best solutions and understand foundationally what's going on. But also, I really can't think of an exception in supply chain where we don't need people to make these plans come to life. So being able to work with partners, being able to work with your team is just as important as, having a very process and data oriented mind or aptitude. So I think the balance of those two things is absolutely essential.
Right. That's something that I actually really like about the industry is that it's not solitary work. You have to be a good team member because if you fail someone on your team, then the whole chain gets disrupted. You have to continuously rely on people. And that I personally like that because I like people.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. It's very much a dominoes type of relationship. Everyone is relying on each other to make sure that we create the best results. And so so data, technology, and relationships are all just essential, I think.
Right, I agree. And then just circling back to your edgy comment,
Yeah.
there's so many things that go along with that because a lot of people always say that you have to be willing to take risks,
Mhm.
and that just is another form of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that edgy, this is something that we've been saying about our breakthrough team members for a while, probably maybe even close to the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years. And edgy is always a topic of debate, but certainly I think you're right. And especially where we're at in supply chain today. I think, consumer demands are sort of evolving faster than ever. And that means that our supply chains need to move faster than ever, have more sort of creative and flexible solutions than ever before. And that comes with some risk taking, some creativity about how to do things better and differently. And if you don't have people that are willing to, put themselves out there with a new solution and then fight to make it work, we won't advance at the speed that we need to, as an industry. And so I think that certainly that edgy quality or that, conviction quality is really, really important.
Mm-hmm. So, when you say being creative, how has the coronavirus pandemic affected your team?
Yeah, such an interesting question. I think, probably like everyone else that you're talking to, um, so many things are happening. So, first and foremost, I think one thing that's really lucky for the breakthrough team and for our business is that, we can all still sort of perform our job functions from home. So we get to be in sort of a safe environment and continue to run our business, which is great. And I think that, the one thing for us that has been challenging, of course, is getting used to Zoom life.
Yeah.
So that took some settling in, but I think that we certainly have found ways to connect. For sure, getting all of our work done. I think the one thing that we talk a little bit about is like the breakthrough magic or the breakthrough culture, and how do we make sure that that sort of stays a part of our interactions so that we're sort of working as effectively as a team as we can be. And so that's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about, like how do we create those personal connections even when it's on a digital or virtual platform. And then I think importantly, finding the right ways to support our clients has been a real key focus for us. So,
Right.
we have just a breadth of clients, some in retail, food, paper products. And of course, those clients have seen, sort of surge buying behavior. And so what's happened to their transportation and supply chain teams looks very different than clients that are in more like durable goods, automobile manufacturing, appliances, for example. We saw some of those things, even in the early days, get totally shut down. And now, of course, they're coming back, but the sort of the disruption between supply and demand of transportation, the way that normal supply chains work, has been very pronounced. And mostly what we've seen in our client behavior is extremes, either extreme surge buying or sort of extreme destruction of normal demand patterns. And
Right.
so I think it's been really important for our team to treat each client individually, because sort of a blanketed approach doesn't meet clients where they're at and give them the solutions that they need. So one of our core values at Breakthrough is client of one. And it's really about making sure that we, connect with each client individually. And that has been like an absolutely foundational value, especially in these times when things are just different than any of us expected when we were, standing in January.
Right, because especially one thing for one client might not work for the other client too. So I think it's important to have that individual approach as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's certainly been a big focus for us.
Right. And so you kind of have a double whammy in a sense because you're a woman in the supply chain industry and you're also in the transportation industry. So, have you faced any challenges, and if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and certainly we are an industry that I think is pushing ourselves to be more heads up about diversity and inclusion, whether that be gender or ethnicity, or even sort of other measures in supply chain and transportation in total. One thing that I feel really lucky about is that Breakthrough has been, an incredibly supportive place for me to be. Certainly we, focus and I think can always do better on diversity and inclusion, but is something that I think front of our organization. Certainly Breakthrough is very much focused on challenging the status quo of transportation. And I think in order to challenge the status quo, you need new ideas, you need different perspectives. And certainly we know that those come from different people with different backgrounds. And so it's been a team that I think has always been focused on finding people of different backgrounds with different ideas and sort of raising up those ideas and people. And so, being in a place where I'm very supportive certainly makes it easier to face challenges that might exist in the industry in total. I think that, I'm excited about this award because I do think that part of the path to changing what maybe traditional demographics looked like is acknowledging where we're at and holding up more examples of successful people in the supply chain so that women or people of color or young people or whatever it is can see themselves in an industry and really find a path for themselves. And I think that that's essential. So I'm excited that we're having this conversation today and focusing on that.
Right, and that's been such a buzzword lately throughout like pop culture and even in the industry, but just like representation matters.
Yeah.
And when you feel represented, you're gonna be more willing to be a part of any industry.
Yeah,
Because
I'm totally with you. Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that's really cool at Breakthrough is, I have a co-COO in the fuel division of the business. She's also a female. We certainly have female representation on the leadership team, and that makes it easier to recruit and retain female talent and really, mentor everyone, but certainly females. And I think that has been just something that I really appreciate about Breakthrough's approach.
oh, that's good. Why do you think more women should be involved in the industry, and how do you think we can recruit and retain more talented women?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of research that shows that diverse teams create better outcomes, are more productive, have more creative problem-solving approaches, because we're not all thinking the same way, because we have different backgrounds and different experience sets and different perspectives. And so I think, in order to create change in the industry and in order to have our most successful teams, we certainly need diversity. And so to me, it's just, that's sort of table stakes. It's foundational to having good teams. So I think it's certainly important to focus on. And then, I think to the conversation that we were just having, I think representation and being able to see yourself in a company, in an industry is huge. So making sure that we, hold that as a priority when we're creating talent, promoting talent is essential to sort of, I think, starting that flywheel and filling our talent pipelines. And I think also just awareness to, I think there's a whole body of research on the way that we write job descriptions and the types of words that we use that are attractive to one gender or make sense in, different groups. And we want to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible. So really being heads up and aware to those types of practices, I think, is important. And then most importantly is there's always room for improvement, right? Like this is a living practice that we all need to get better at. So I think having awareness to it, having these conversations, making it a focus organizationally is essential.
That's such an interesting point that you made about the job applications, because is a stat floating around that like 60 to 70% of men will apply for a job that they don't think they're qualified for, while I think they said it was like 40% of women would do the same thing.
Mhm.
So that does have to be more inclusive as well.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I think I know what you're making reference to for sure. And making sure, internally we have some control over that, when there's sort of a promotion type position, encouraging all team members to apply for it and not, just sort of letting it shake out as it may. So making sure that we're raising up talent that is certainly deserving of opportunities. And then I think externally it is about, having as unbiased a look as we can at qualifications, at resumes, before we begin the interview process. That's so important.
Right. I completely agree with you on that. Because everybody has internal biases, but you have to be able to confront those as well. And I think that's becoming very clear over this last summer, but it's gonna people are changing for the better because of it.
Yeah, it's certainly a topic that has been, I think at the forefront for a while, but we're focusing on it more than ever, which I think is really great. And sort of circling back to the beginning of this portion of the conversation is diversity on teams creates better outcomes. We can see that in research, and so focusing on getting that into our organizations, making a path for it is important, I think.
I completely agree. So what advice do you have for those that are first starting out in the industry?
Gosh, such a good question. I think that it's a really exciting time to be in supply chain, and even more of a niche focus because it's the area that I'm in, transportation. I think that there are many trends that we saw coming toward us that, this pandemic, I think, has sped up and proliferated. So things like e-commerce, things like consume at home, curbside pickup, these types of things. These were all trends that were certainly growing, and then I think in the last 6 months have grown exponentially as compared to what we might have expected. These trends require new supply chain solutions, new transportation solutions, more data-based ways to speed things up, make things more efficient. And what we're learning with the coronavirus is efficiency isn't enough. Robustness of supply chains is also essential. So we're certainly sitting in a time right now of huge opportunity.
Right.
So I think that if you're someone that, is looking for an industry that will have a really rich career path for you, this is a great place to look. As we were talking about, sort of the marriage of data and relationships is a really fun place to find your niche. I think that it certainly requires, detail-oriented, sort of laser focus on details, but also flexibility because things are changing so quickly. And so it's certainly a fast-paced industry, a fun thing to be a part of. My experience has certainly been that there's, endless opportunity as long as you are working hard, making connections with people, and staying heads up to what the next opportunity looks like. And so I think it's just a fun place to be, which makes for, every day a little bit better when you're going into the office or, turning on your Zoom, whatever the case may be.
Right, because no day is the same. There's always something different that's happening. And that I personally really enjoy that because you're constantly working your brain to problem solve.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's such a good measure. Those days when you've had to really problem solve and work hard. I'm so tired when I wrap up the day, and I'm thankful for that because I think that it is, intellectually challenging, which is great. I'm certainly a person who wants to be able to think about things differently, and really invest in my work, and I feel like I've always had that opportunity in this industry.
Oh, well, that's good. So, Heather, I just have one last question for you today because I get it, you're a very busy lady. But how does it feel to be named as one of the SCCE's Women in Supply Chain?
Great question to end on. I'm so excited about it, and I feel so honored. This is an industry, again, as we've talked about, where there are so many exciting things happening, and there are so many women, both blazing trails and doing great things, and really thinking about like how do we create a more diverse and inclusive workforce in this industry in our organizations. And so, being recognized for the work that I'm doing, of course, feels really great. And so I'm just honored that I'm able to have this recognition. It's been a fun conversation with you, and also just a really cool award. And so I'm incredibly appreciative.
Well, that makes me very happy, and I'm sure that many girls are gonna look up to you and be very happy when they see
Oh, well,
this.
thank you. That's such a nice thing to say. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Okay, just one second.